on, and now it's my privilege to call upon Dr. Gillian Sparks. Friends, we heard from the academia, the research, the UN body, and also the private sector. Dr. Gillian is going to share her thoughts as the Commissioner of Environmental Sustainability, Government of Victoria, how she has taken SDGs and its enablement in order to develop the environmental reporting, a practitioner's approach. Welcome, Gillian, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Savar, and to my fellow speakers for the opportunity to join this very distinguished panel today. I will briefly touch on my work and the work that we're doing and why the SDGs are important for that work in my role as Commissioner for Environmental Sustainability for Victoria, and illustrate how Earth observation and spatial data fits in. But first, in case any of you are not quite sure where Victoria is, I thought I'd just share this map with you to show you that Victoria is right at the bottom east of Australia, and I'm coming to you from the very southeast of Melbourne on the traditional lands of the traditional owners, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So we are actually, as Monica was talking about user cases, this is a use case, so it's quite very timely in the panel session tonight. We've heard from Abbas as well about his work, and which links quite closely to the work that I'm doing in Victoria. Apologies for saying tonight, by the way, it is tonight in Melbourne, and I know it's not tonight everywhere. So a key function of my role as Commissioner is to provide independent and objective scientific reporting on Victoria's environment and to advise the Victorian Government. And as Commissioner, I lead a small team of very talented people that support me to prepare very many reports, including the 5-yearly Victorian State of the Environment report. That is the cover of the most recent one to the left of your screen. This is a comprehensive report on Victoria's environmental condition, which includes recommendations to government. As I said, the most recent SOE, which is on your screen, was prepared in 2018, and it was tabled in the Victorian Parliament in March 2019, and essentially tells 3 stories. It tells 1 about the current health of Victoria's natural environment, 2 about the adequacy of our science programs, 3 about future focus and what we need to do next, and really that's partly where the SDGs work fits in. This was a very comprehensive scientific baseline report on Victoria, the most comprehensive in recent years, and looked at 170 indicators across 13 themes, and included 20 recommendations to government. Those 170 traditional indicators were also mapped by myself and my team to the SDGs against 52 SDG targets. So we mapped and aligned our work at the SDG target level. The recommendations include, as recommendation 20, that the Commissioner adopt the SDGs as an operating framework for the Victorian State of the Environment 2023, which is the next one due, and that is the basis of the work I'm discussing tonight. The SDGs are the missing link to improving how we report on the environment. And to explain that, an objective of the Commissioner under the Act that I work under is to encourage decision-making that facilitates ecologically sustainable development. So implementing the SDGs makes sense. Before we had the SDGs, it was much more difficult to have, for example, a consensus framework, a common language for measuring progress against diverse goals that go beyond environmental indicators into socioeconomic indicators. And we know, and you are demonstrating just through this panel session tonight and the great work that's going on, that there is broad support for the SDGs from across business, government and community, and for the 2030 agenda. So it really makes sense, and it was very opportunistic for us and very fortunate that in this cycle, as we were ready to advance our environmental reporting to include much more socio-economic information as well as interlinkages and looking at connectedness between situations. So when we're making recommendations to government, we can make really well-informed, even more informed recommendations to government than ever before using the SDGs as a framework. So following on from the effective work of the State of the Environment 2018 and the inclusion of SDG indicators at the target level, in particular in the Victorian State of the Environment report, and as I mentioned, the recommendation that the next State of the Environment report adopt the SDGs as an operating framework. In June of 2020, I prepared the Science for Sustainable Development framework and tabled in the Victorian Parliament. This framework adopts the SDGs to express and quantify more than ever before the concept of ecological sustainable development, and it outlines the approach and sets out the approach that we will take for developing the State of the Environment 2023 report for Victoria and the raft of reports that we will do under that whole framework. So there's about 6 or 7 reports that we'll be preparing under the concepts that are embraced in this framework. And the key linkage between the importance of spatial data and our work on SDGs is that spatial technologies can provide more data more often about more things at scale, which will ultimately make data more affordable and more accessible. As we know, and we've heard from previous speakers, it's one thing to have the SDGs, it's another thing to quantify. So to animate the intention of the Science for Sustainable Development framework, we need data. And that isn't always easy to get, and we have found through traditional methods and our State of the Environment 2018 report, which is available on our website, indicates where we're lacking in data, in fact, in some areas. And we know that Earth observation and spatial, for example, of the 170 indicators that we reported against, we know that 30 would be improved through the use of Earth observation, for example. So access to more and better environmental and socio-economic data is critical if we want to fulfil our ambition of reporting against our progress on the SDGs and therefore bringing our framework to life. So here, for example, and obviously this is very familiar sorts of images for you, but I thought I would just use some imagery to illustrate the sorts of data that we're looking to get so that we can then use that to populate our framework and bring our framework to life and make sure that the State of the Environment 2023 report and associated reports are more comprehensive and our recommendations to government are more comprehensively analysed than ever before. This is a continuous improvement agenda as well as an SDGs agenda. This is a building footprint, and the data sets here are an extraction from airborne imagery and LiDAR data. These data sets can be used with machine learning, using different indicators to interrogate different aspects to properly understand people and their interactions with the built environment and detect changes, for example. So the built environment, urban environments are very important with State of the Environment reporting, as you can imagine, as is the natural environment. So here is a very beautiful image showing the Ord River estuary in Western Australia where it meets the Bonaparte Gulf. Although it isn't in Victoria, it is in Western Australia, the imagery is so impressive and so illustrative, I thought it would be useful to share this. So this image highlights vegetation in green for the land and differences in water clarity and constituents through true colour composite into the streams. The sorts of detail that we can then get that we wouldn't get with traditional methods that we can now get for our reporting about what's happening and where it's happening in various environments across our state, obviously across the globe, but for us in Victoria, across our state, will be enlivened like never before through the use of Earth observation. And finally, one of the really difficult things to do in our work is to get information about and intelligence about remote and complex environments. This is an example again of a WA, Western Australia, Ramsar wetland site, Roebuck Bay, which is a site that's incredibly important on a global scale for migratory shorebirds. To the left of the screen, you can see the Roebuck Bay at low tide. In the middle of the screen, you can see high tide. And for people who work in environmental protection, the image at the screen on the right of the intertidal zone has really critically important information and tells us a lot about the coast, the marine environment, and the health of both of them. So the intertidal zone and analysis of the intertidal zone can tell us a lot about what's happening on coastal environments and on those marine environments, both in remote and complex environments, but also in urban environments. And we are doing a lot of work around Port Phillip Bay and Western Port, again in Victoria, where we're wanting to analyse the intertidal zone in great detail. So everything happens somewhere, and we need for our work to have its most impact and be of most value to Victorians and our environment. We need to know what and where to move the ideas to actions when it comes to SDGs. We think they are an incredibly powerful framework. We think that they are incredibly useful for our work, and we're very focused on how Earth observation and spatial data can help us to bring these ideas to life. Thank you very much.